The old people used to say that there used to be stirrings, and that there used to be things happening around Halloween. They used to say that there was definitely a vibe of a kind of an otherworld on the hill in their day, that you would not go up on the hill. You would not go near it on Halloween night. It belonged to the world of the spirits. That's what the old people said. It belongs to the spirits and leave them be.
Generation X Paranormal.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back.
Hey everybody.
I'm Logan.
And I'm Nicole.
Now, it is spooky season.
It is spooky season.
As you can tell by this awesome background here. So it's time to break out the pumpkins, the candy corn that you love so much.
No, it belongs in the trash.
No, it does not. It is a
Reese's are where it's at. So
I'm not saying Reese's aren't good. I'm just saying that candy corn and those little candy pumpkin, you guys know what I'm talking about. The little candy corn pumpkins, delicious.
You say that. I say they're not good.
Back me up here, guys.
Actually, let's do a little poll here.
All right.
Who's for Reese's and who's for candy corns during Halloween? Because I'm on the Reese's team.
I'm on either. It's sugar, so I don't really care, but
candy corn is like wax melts. I'm sorry.
Wax
it always has been.
Well, if you want, let's leave a comment. Tell us what you think. I think candy corn's delicious. You guys are probably going to think I'm crazy, but that's okay. Anyway, so we are at that time, and as you can see behind us, we have these wonderful things that say Halloween and Samhain. Now, there's a ton of Halloween stuff out there. You can find it. Don't worry about it. Probably not a ton of stuff on Samhain, and that's how it's pronounced, Samhain, right?
So even though it looks like Samhain, it is not Samhain.
Yeah, I'm not gonna have a bunch of fun on Samhain. That just sounds really weird.
Sounds like a person.
That's right. I'm not gonna go do Samhain. Anyway, so instead of just doing just the regular Halloween that we all know, guys, Halloween's celebrated everywhere. It's worldwide. Okay. It's not just a U.S. holiday. It's not just a bunch of people running around with little plastic pumpkins and getting candy. Incredibly fun, but it's not everything. So,
not the origins.
Not the origins. So that's what we're about to get into. So tell us a little bit about Samhain.
Okay, so it is celebrated, like he said, all over the world. There are some countries that it did originate in. Okay, and what we are going to focus on today is Ireland.
Yes.
And it is pronounced Samhain in Ireland. Okay, it's pronounced different things in different countries, but we are focusing on Ireland.
That's right.
Okay, so you are going to be familiar with some of these things. I'm going to just mention them before we get to our guest.
Okay.
Because we have a very special guest.
We do.
To talk to us.
We're pretty excited.
I'm very excited about speaking with him. But you know, the typical, will we go around house to house, trick-or-treating, right?
Trick-or-treat, you know, give me something good to eat, whatever that is.
Yes. Well, we got to finish the rhyme
I don't
now.
remember. Give me something good to eat.
Something about smelly feet.
It's the part they only really remember, smelly feet.
Yeah, which I never got why they would do that. However.
Trick-or-treat, smell my feet, give me something good to eat, isn't it?
Yes.
How I just remembered that, I'll never know.
Because I said smelly feet.
That's sad that I have to agree.
Yes. So, that is in relation to what they called the mummers play.
Mummers play. Okay.
So, it's an old pagan belief, and they would go door to door on Samhain, singing a song, or the children would beg for whatever, candy, probably, like food, more likely, and say different rhymes. So, you see how that kind of translated into what we do now. It's a rhyme. It's kind of like a sing song.
Yeah.
And they go door to door. Now it's a bunch of sugar and candy and
Give me crap.
all the things that clog my arteries.
If you find anybody even trick-or-treating anymore. But yeah.
We still do.
Yeah,
it's more trunk or treats now.
Which, by the way, sounds even worse. You know, get a bunch of people
in the back of your car and give me stuff.
It's nuts. I mean, yeah, okay, I get going house to house, fine.
It's supposed to be safer, But I feel like it just takes away from the magic of it.
Yeah, here's a bunch of crap from my trunk. Eat it.
Well, I mean, a lot of people have tents set up around there, and they have like little games and stuff. So it's not just like the old trunk, like open up.
You know what it reminds me of? I think of like, remember Uncle Buck, John Candy, where he had that.
That's what you imagine when I think about it. Like
open up the trunk,
one of those old '80s cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody like Beetlejuice comes out. Hey, kids. Oh. Anyway.
So that is in relation to that. We got to keep going.
All right.
Okay. And, people like to get into mischief on Halloween, right? So the young people back then, they would, like remove doors from the sheds, because you're thinking back, when people had a lot of farms and stuff. So they would remove the doors. They would let the cows out of the field where the farmer would have to go chasing after them.
Cool, man. That sucks.
But they would also impersonate spirits of the land.
Okay.
So what does that sound like? Dressing up the old-fashioned ghost with the sheet over you.
Right.
With the holes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, would they have done that back then with the sheets?
No, I'm saying that's what it led to.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where it started. Like, you think about the first costumes. That was like the main costume people would dress up as.
Okay. That makes sense. That's weird. So they would... It's interesting how we've kind of, I don't want to say perverted, but kind of...
taken it into...
Translated it. Yeah, now we're going to dress up as Iron Man.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
It's cool.
They didn't have Iron Man back then, so...
Or did they?
No, they did not. Now, this is a big one.
Okay.
Okay, because you think about divination being a modern thing, right?
Yes.
No. Absolutely not, in fact.
Well, it's true, because we do have divining rods.
Divining
rods.
No. I'm talking... No.
Anyway.
All right, moving on. But they had a few, and there's a lot, actually.
Okay.
But I'm going to mention a few. Okay. They would put candles by the wind and watch how the flame would go.
Okay.
Okay. They would eat apples and hazelnuts, and I'll get the reason why here in a second. So those were the two main foods they would kind of focus on. Okay. And with the apple core, they would put it on like a hot poker on the fire, or near the fire at least.
Okay.
And so the reaction of how they would, I don't know, like heat up, or they probably like shrivel or something is what I'm going to guess. I've never done it, so I don't know.
Well, now we have a task to do.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what it does. And I guess in the direction or however it would move would tell them if they were going to be unlucky in love, or if they were going to stay with the person they were currently with.
Okay, yeah.
They had translations for that. I'm not sure what they were.
Sure.
And you could also, if you peeled the apple in one long strand, without breaking it, and you throw it over your shoulder.
Okay.
So the peel. And whatever letter it looked like on the ground was supposed to be the first letter of the name of the person that you were going to fall for. Or lover or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I kind of want to try that. I wonder if I'll get an L.
I don't know. I'll probably get an N, though, because, that would be a natural way for it to actually fall. By the way, it was dowsing rods.
Yes, not
not divination rods.
Or whatever, diving rods.
Not what I said.
Use them underwater.
All right, now.
Okay. Anyway, the hazelnut one is kind of interesting. So they would take 2 hazelnuts and they would put them on the embers.
Okay.
Okay. And if the nuts would like kind of move towards each other, like jump from probably heating up, they kind of like bounce around.
Yeah.
They determined that was to mean like if they went towards each other that they were most likely going to be getting married.
Interesting.
2 people coming together.
Yeah.
And I think they would name each hazelnut.
Oh, okay.
Like your name and then like Nicole and Logan.
Right. Okay.
And if they went like this, you're probably going to end up with that person. If they don't, they go the other way.
Be interesting to see what our nuts do. I wanted to say my nuts.
PG.
But hey.
Okay. Now, a couple more things.
Okay.
So they always had the bonfire.
Yeah.
The big fire.
Yeah.
And
which is kind of what we got sort of depicted.
Yeah, exactly. Well, our man's covering it. Or whatever he is. They would light the fire and pray for the dead and they would kneel in front of it.
Okay.
So it's kind of similar to a lot of cultures I find in this thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty common for how they told stories and stuff back then, too, so that makes sense.
And sometimes, like, the farmers and, like, the country people that lived out, they would walk, and they said in a sunrise direction.
Okay.
So I guess whichever direction the sun was going to come up that next morning, they would walk in that direction.
Well, that'd be west, typically.
Yeah, with a flaming torch or like lit straw or whatever they had, basically.
Okay.
And they would bless the land to protect it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, for like the coming year.
Okay. So it was a harvest celebration.
Yes. I mean, a lot of this led to remembering your ancestors, right?
Well, sure.
Okay. So, in the ancient times, they would sacrifice like animals, possibly even humans. We don't actually know for sure.
That's about on brand.
Yeah. To ensure the good harvest for the coming year. But more recently, now they just leave out food, like a plate at the dinner table. Yeah. Like they were going to come back. So it's very similar to the Mexican tradition, leaving out food. And then that kind of translated into what? What would you think that?
I would think that's getting a treat, getting candy.
Yeah, like getting the candy. Yeah. So now instead of, wholesome food, now we just give sugar. So it's easier to get, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was young, you'd get apples, but you couldn't have any because, it could have razor blades.
Oh, I know. We always had to dump it all out on the floor.
Yeah.
And my parents had to inspect it. Yeah. But I'm like, how are you really going to see that inside of something?
2 for me, 1 for you.
Yeah, I think that's probably how it went.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. They would also light a candle, like as they're, showing the signs of respect to their ancestors. But if they didn't have a candle, that was for the rich.
Oh.
Okay. So this leads to something we do today.
Okay.
It's very different. So it was an invitation to return to the family homestead for that night.
Okay.
Okay. But if you didn't have a candle, because candles were expensive, the poor would carve out a turnip.
Wow.
Put the light inside and turn it into a lantern. What does that sound like we do now?
A pumpkin for sure.
Exactly. So when they came to the States, pumpkins were much bigger, easier to carve than a turnip.
Sure.
And that turned into our jack-o'-lanterns.
Imagine how hard that was to carve a turnip.
Yeah. I mean, they had to use what they had to use.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very interesting.
That is interesting how it kind of went from like a very, very difficult thing to do to, hey, let's use a pumpkin and now rip its guts out and cook that too.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's cool.
So that is kind of like the introduction to this episode, all the stuff that we know of today.
Right.
However, there is an ancient beginning to all of this.
Ancient beginning, okay.
And I don't think we are qualified.
No, I'm not.
To speak about this. So I really wanted someone that knew what they were talking about.
Right.
So I went on the internet and I searched and I found this man who wrote this book.
Yeah.
Okay. Happens to be a druid, which
Nice.
I thought was awesome. But the book is Samhain, The Roots of Halloween.
Okay.
Okay. And what can you tell us about Luke Eastwood?
So
by the way, he is not Clint Eastwood's son.
But
just to clarify.
Still, that's pretty cool.
Yes.
I so would have abused that if I was him. Anyway, Luke Eastwood, he's an artist, a designer, musician, a photographer, writer, horticulturist, Reiki practitioner, and is involved in environmental activism with Extinction Rebellion and FOE. He currently lives in Ireland and is a facilitator of a grove on the Dingle Peninsula in County Kerry. Now, he became an Archibald of a...
An Archibald?
An Archibald. An archdruid. Yeah, he became an archdruid. That's so hilarious. He became an archdruid of Druid Clan of Dana in 2009 and completed his Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids training in 2011 and is currently a mentor for them.
Yeah, so if you don't know what this order is...
Apparently I can't. Jeez.
It's basically, it's a community around the world, and they love nature and want to follow a magical spiritual way that respects and protects the natural world and all its beauty. Members work with spiritual teachings that combine the inspiration of the ancient druids and the old stories with contemporary scholarship and insights into the relationship between human beings and the world of plants and animals, stars and stones.
Cool.
And it sounds so awesome, and I so want to do it.
All right, well, let's get on with it.
But first, let's talk to Luke and find out the origins of Samhain.
Yeah, and not he's not an Archibald.
No, it's not. Oh, help us.
Well, hey, Luke, welcome to Generation X Paranormal. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you. Thanks a million for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we try to do, especially when it comes to Halloween and a few of the stateside holidays, we try to kind of expand a little bit, get a little bit more knowledge on kind of where things started and those sort of things. But kind of before we do, can you let our audience know a little bit about yourself?
I live in the west of Ireland. I'm originally from Scotland, although I didn't live there for very long. I spent a good bit of time in England. I lived in London for 10 years. I was married to an Irish woman, so I'd come to Ireland since the early 1991 onwards, and moved here in 99, and I've stayed here ever since. And I've done most of my druid training here in Ireland. I'm in more than one organization, but I suppose the first one I was with is one called OBOD, which is the Order of Bards, Hobbits and Druids, which is a worldwide druid order.
Awesome.
And I think that's the biggest one in the world, actually, as far as I know. I spent quite a long time studying that. I'm interested in sort of spirituality generally, Buddhism, the Hindu religion. In fact, I've studied pretty much everything from Islam and Judaism, Kabbalah, you name it, really. I kind of had a look at it. I suppose it took me a long time to figure out what I actually really believed, and I kind of ended up settling on Druidism, partly because I've always had a love of nature and environmentalism, and an interest in kind of Celtic history and things. And the sort of general philosophy of it just seemed to fit quite well with my own ideas,
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that makes perfect sense. I mean,
I get that.
Yeah, well, we get that too. Obviously you don't have a show about the paranormal or anything like that, spirituality, if you're not, I think, somewhat on your own journey, trying to find different answers for things. I find that's pretty common for everybody to run across. But, we collectively have a Celtic background. I've got some ancestry, and I know Nicole has some ancestry. So we're very interested in, especially here in the States, when it comes to Halloween, like most holidays in the States, and I don't know abroad, everything gets marketed, everything gets a UPC stamp to sell it. Everything becomes so corporatized that, a lot of people, and it's no fault of their own, they just don't know some of the...
Forget the actual meaning
of
it.
The meaning of it in the background. And I hope today we kind of, at least when it comes to Halloween and Druidism and things of that nature, that we kind of, I guess, put some information out there that some folks may not know.
Well,
so
it's interesting that you mention that, because like when I was a kid, you still had things like paper bags. You had, actual glass bottles you took back to the shop and all that stuff, and you got money back.
Mm-hmm.
So, when people celebrated Halloween when I was a kid, you'd kind of make, things out of bed sheets, like a ghost costume with little eye holes, or, homemade Dracula outfit or something. And people made papier-mâché kind of things, and they got a pumpkin, or actually originally that would have been a turnip, but a pumpkin's so much easier to make a lantern out of, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure.
See why people gave up on the turnips.
Yeah, they're pretty rough, that's for sure.
My point is, it was like very much homemade, because like back in the 70s, everything was less commercialized. There wasn't like plastic everywhere. I was about to say I'd like to burn it all, but actually, no, you shouldn't burn plastic. It's
Right.
really
No,
bad.
that'd be terrible.
You get my meaning.
Recycle it all.
I'd love to get rid of it all because it's
Yeah.
like the whole thing with these kind of pagan festivals and actually spirituality in general is you're supposed to like put some effort into it and some feeling and thought.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if just the same as like if you're a Buddhist, you're not supposed to go off and sort of just buy a bunch of plastic trinkets and think that's going to get you into nirvana. It's not.
Right. No.
And the same applies to all spirituality. If you're going to try to take shortcuts and sort of, you know, cheat to sort of get ahead on a spiritual level, ultimately it isn't going to work for you. You're just fooling yourself, really.
Yeah, for sure.
That makes sense. So let's go back, way back. Start at the beginning of how Halloween came to be.
Okay, well, I would say this is something that goes back into prehistory, and I kind of go back. I wrote a book about this, which is called Samhain, the Roots of Halloween, and that's kind of as far back as I can go in terms of recorded history. If you don't mind, I'll quickly show you the book cover.
Yeah.
Sure.
You see that?
Mm-hmm.
I love the color, but actually I didn't have a whole lot to do with it. That's the publisher chose that image, but it just so happened that I really liked it. So
Yeah, I did
anyway,
too.
We have it ourselves. We read it,
Oh,
but the
cool.
problem is we were going to
can't-
show it.
The green screen.
Yeah, but for folks who are listening,
See
you
the
don't.
lighting, though, it's fine.
Right.
Right.
Right. For folks who are listening, they don't get to see this, but if you're watching it on the video, our green screen chroma key is completely dashed it out. So yeah, but yeah, we did pick it up as well. So.
Put the plug in there anyway. Well, the point being is that it goes back in sort of the earliest sort of recorded sort of history in Ireland, but this kind of celebration, you know, didn't spring up in isolation. Probably this goes back into the Neolithic period, probably sort of into sort of the kind of practices that you find in ancient shamanism and the kind of ideas you'd see in sort of Lapland, Siberia, etc., that are kind of still extant and in some sort of ancient indigenous cultures. But you know, by the time you get to actually calling it Samhain, which is the Irish name for this festival, which means the end of summer. You know, you're into sort of like the Bronze Age, pretty much, and you've still got you know, leftovers, if you like, or a continuation of the sort of religious ideas of the Neolithic period. It's actually really a festival of the dead, and if you look into it, this idea of a festival of the dead, of the ancestors, you'll find that all over the world.
Absolutely.
You'll find very close parallels in somewhere like Mexico, the Day of the Dead. And you look at the Chinese, they venerate their ancestors even now. And they have little shrines to their ancestors. I don't really know much about it, but I think they have like special days for remembering ancestors and such like.
Yeah, they sure do.
So it's a common theme throughout history. And in ancient times, this idea of communicating with the spirit world, communicating with the dead, was a lot more prevalent than it is now.
Right.
I think our modern lifestyles, especially kind of being surrounded by technological life, kind of deadens you to this otherworldly or sort of supernatural world, if you want to call it that. This place where Samhain was most kind of prominent is a place called Clopter up in County Meath. It's now called the Hill of Ward because of a family, the Ward family, that came to own it in the 1700s. So the name got changed, but it's still there, the original site. And it's been excavated, and they've proven from the archaeology that it was in use as early as 1350 BCE. Well, that's from like organic materials that they found there.
Oh,
But that doesn't mean it was built then. It could have been built hundreds of years again before that. But, they're going on what they can actually date as opposed
right.
to, who knows? It could have been there since, could have been there 1,000 years before that still.
For sure.
And they think that it probably was there quite some time before and was added to over time.
It's just amazing.
I know. I just it's so far back. It's amazing. So I know with the Hill of Ward, and there's other sacred sites in Ireland, that there's the belief, or at least you wrote about it in the book, about the alignment of all the sites. Can you talk a little bit about that and like the shifting of the seasons?
Yeah, well, most of these ancient sites, going back into the Neolithic era, are astronomical alignments. You've got like 4 really important astronomical events. There's winter and summer solstices, and there's the spring and autumn equinoxes. Right? So if you go all around the world, you'll find ancient stone monuments and stone circles which are aligned to these events. And in Ireland, you'll also find them aligned to some of the sort of, I suppose, Celtic fire festivals they're referred to, or cross-quarter. Those would be Samhain, which is like the beginning and end of the year, if you like. And then you've got Imbolc, which is in the beginning of spring, that's associated with the goddess Brigid. And then you've got in May, you have Bealtaine. And then you have Lunacer in August, which is the beginning of the harvest, very much associated with the god Lu and his foster mother. Anyway, so there's 8 festivals within the pagan year, and this is sort of kind of pretty much standardized now, although the names aren't always the same. Wiccans and other witches have different names from what the Druids use. Druids in Wales and England have slightly different names from here in Ireland, but it's basically this wheel of 8, and you'll find this symbol of the sort of a crossed circle. This is relating to the 4 main astronomical events, which is the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes. So you have like a cross like that, equal arm with a circle around it. That is not a Christian symbol. That is a very ancient pagan symbol, which has gone back into prehistory. If you go into a graveyard, you see these Celtic crosses.
Right.
They didn't invent that. The Christian monks and, whatever, they just appropriated a symbol that was thousands of years older.
Wow, I did not know that.
So you've got the shortest day of the year, which is at the winter solstice, and you've got the longest day of the year, which is at the summer solstice. And then you have 2 equinoxes, which are points of near enough equal day and equal night. The exact point is referred to as the equilux, but where it's like 12 and 12. But the equinox is almost the same, but it's actually the midpoint between the 2 solstices. In time. And at this point, we're just coming up to that now. But what happens is, as you progress through the year, the time period obviously changes for the days, and as you're coming either side of the equinoxes, the speed at which of change accelerates enormously fast. So you're the speed of change sort of in September and October is incredibly quick. So you're noticing that each day you're losing more and more daylight. And the other way around on the other side, when you're going through spring, the end of spring, it suddenly starts to get brighter and brighter really quickly. But because that's all down to the tilt of the Earth, the 23 degrees angle. But so that point on both sides, you've got this tremendously fast change. So you've got this progression from summer into winter and from, winter into summer. And then you've got the opposite thing happening at the solstices. When you get to the middle of winter, which is sort of associated with the northern point, certainly in the northern hemisphere it would be, you get this slowing down where the 3 days in the middle, around the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, or even to the 24th, the sun appears to have just like stopped, where it doesn't descend anymore, and the sunrise time is exactly the same, only off by a few seconds for that period, and then it starts to change again. That's why it's called the solstice.
Okay.
Which means sun stopped. And Greenstad in Irish means sun standing still. So,
interesting.
The ancients understood about all this. And then you get at the upper end of the summer, you've got the same thing where for 3 days, the sun is at its highest point in the sky and it stays at that same point for 3 days. And, the sunrise will be at the same time for roughly 3 days.
Wow.
But a lot of people think that the most important time was the winter solstice to many of the real ancients. So in the Celtic year, you've got this strange situation when you had 2 seasons and the beginning of end is at Samhain. But to many people, they would say like it's sort of a stasis period where, things are sort of going into death. And then you have like a rebirth at the winter solstice where the sun starts to actually come back again.
Okay.
But there's no coincidence that Christmas is placed right there at the end of the solstice period. The winter solstice is incredibly important with this regeneration. And you have an interesting parallel with, in Irish mythology, Angus MacAnog is called and Macan was like the child of light. He's born at the winter solstice at Newgrange.
Really?
And that's where the light penetrates on the winter solstice into the back of the chamber. And what about Jesus? Jesus is born and he's like this light of the world. He's born
in the star.
Just straight after that. It's no accident that they placed Christmas at this time. Actually, no one really knows for sure when Jesus was born. A lot of astronomers have kind of guessed it's more likely around April, but it certainly wasn't December the 25th. That's for sure.
Yeah, we've heard that before.
Yeah, I've heard that before in the spring. And it's just amazing to me, like with all the standing stones, how they were able to calculate and place them. I mean, it's just, I don't know.
It's not actually as hard as you think. You can do it yourself. Right, purely.
Well, I might not be able to do it myself. Maybe you can do it yourself.
No, I could teach you how to do it really easy. All you really need is like a long stick and like some string and like something to mark the ground with, like I don't know, a bit of chalk or a few stones. Because you can literally, if you're prepared to get up at the right times or be there, in the evening at the right times, you can stand in your central point and you can observe, okay, I can see the sun set here on this day, and put a marker then, and then you can do the opposite markers. In fact, pretty much it forms a cross anyway. Once you've got one of them, you can then make a cross in alignment with that and get most of the other ones.
Okay.
And you can make it. It's not actually, people think there's this huge mystery to it. It's just astronomical observation. And these are markers to mark it. It does mean that you don't have to remember. So when you imagine if every time you went somewhere to do a ceremony, you had to go and do it all again every time.
Right.
It would be a pain in the ass, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So
it sure would be.
you create these permanent structures, these markers in stone, which give you your astronomical alignments, and they did tend to pick places of sort of you could call them like psychic or earth energy or ley lines, whatever,
Yeah.
where there was a special energy is where they will choose to build these places.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual construction of them is not as mysterious and complicated as people think.
That's interesting.
That's very interesting. I have a hard enough time building a bookshelf.
Well, but in moving the stones, like some of the, like even Stonehenge, those stones are so huge.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
how they got them all there.
And recently there was a discovery, and I'm sure you may or may not have heard of this, Luke, but I think within this year they discovered that the I guess the altarpiece stone is actually got is from Scotland.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you wonder, this is
How
prior.
I know.
Yeah, how did they get it there?
Well,
just
and there's
I don't know.
interesting
amazing.
theories around that. One theory is that they use boats.
Right.
Right. If you
Okay.
figure about like the ancient world, a lot of Europe, certainly Ireland and Britain, it was absolutely covered in forests, right?
Mhm.
Prior to the end of the Ice Age, a lot of this was all uninhabited. When the ice kind of retreated,
Mm-hmm.
all of these places in Northern Europe and that just got completely full of trees. And, wildlife gradually returned. And it's amazing how quickly, if you just have a field and you don't have any animals on it and just leave it, in a matter of like 10 years, there's be like trees all over it and you could barely see the grass anymore.
Yeah.
So imagine if it took like 200-300 years for people to return to these places. The entire country would be absolutely covered in trees. So how are you going to get like from, say, well, Cork wouldn't have existed, but you wanted to get from Cork to Belfast, was right up in the north. If you decide to walk through the forest, should probably take you like a whole month to get there. If you got in a boat that you made, I mean, boats have been around a long time, and you just sail up the river, you get there in a day or two,
Yeah.
So if you want to transport stuff, doesn't it make sense to make a big, huge boat and stick the stones onto your boat, and very carefully, I might add,
Yeah. Or else it's
get
gonna
it
be at the
down the
bottom.
river.
No kidding. Good Lord.
Yeah.
So something I find interesting, and I know we could probably talk at disgusting lengths about this, but the number 3 comes up a lot. And it's not just with religion, but it's, obviously it's utilized a lot in that because, in Christianity, you got the Trinity, the Holy Trinity, and then, things seem to be built out in 3. And I know in your book, you mentioned the 3 realms, which I want to get to, but I just find it interesting that that number is so prevalent in,
It is.
it not just with religion, but in earth sciences and a lot of other certain things. And I honestly, personally don't think that's by any mistake, but, if you could talk a little bit, Luke, about kind of the 3 realms that you spoke of and speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the Trinity. There's the legends about St. Patrick, and it goes on about, St. Patrick with the trefoil, the shamrock, and going over, the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, blah, blah. This idea was not invented of 3 being special. That wasn't invented by St. Patrick. That idea in Ireland was of 3 being a sacred number and multiples of 3, 9 being very important too. That goes back like, I couldn't tell you how long, but I would say it must be at least 2,000 or 3,000 years BCE. Could be 10,000 years. There's no way of knowing because the written records that relate to the ancient history, they're not specific, and they didn't have any dates, and they were written down at a much later date. But you've got in Irish cosmology, which has got some similarities to Wales. The Welsh cosmology has 3 as a very important number with 3 realms, although the Welsh version is a little bit different from the Irish version. So the ancient Druids and their predecessors would have believed in the idea of three realms and three cauldrons which exist in your body, quite like chakras, if you like, and not four elements like you get in sort of modern Neoplatonic elements in magic, nine elements. So I'll tell you a little bit about this then. So you've got three realms, which are sky, land, and sea. And they're kind of where the three of them meet can be quite a powerful place. So like on a seashore where you've got the sort of the feeling of the three of them sort of together is a good place to do sort of spiritual or magical workings. So again, I mentioned about these cauldrons, and they've got associated with different parts of the body. The first one would be like the head, which is Koirosois, which that would be the cauldron of knowledge, and that's associated with the sky, which is around the sky or earth or spare the sky. And then next you've got the flesh, which I suppose is the main part of your body, Koira Anme, which is a vocation, and that's associated with Tullav or Antaloon, which is land in Irish. And then you've got the blood that runs through your veins, which unsurprisingly is associated with the sea. That's Corrigorath, that the cauldron. And it's a cauldron of warming, which kind of gives you your energy, your life energy, if you like. And that's associated, like I said, with the sea, which words for that are Mara and Farraga in Irish. So these three realms are connected together. You've got like the land which we live on. The sky is like the spiritual realm of the gods. And beneath is sort of not really beneath, but around you, the sea sort of, it's not really beneath you like the other world. But that's where the realm of the dead, the realm of the fairies and spiritual beings, but not the gods. They they're more associated with the sky. So you can access that through the land, through fairy mounds and stuff. And you can also access that by riding out beyond the ninth wade. There's a story about Oshin on this, going on this horse off into the other world. He rides across on this magic horse beyond into the Western Ocean, where the other world was thought to be. Because I suppose in Ireland you got a gap of 3,000 miles before you hit land again. So the ancients, they did actually discover, they went to Newfoundland and stuff. I think that's St. Brendan. His voyage actually did happen, but like for a very, very long time, people thought there was nothing. That was the end of the world, that Ireland was the edge of the world, and beyond that was the other world, the realm of the sea, and nothing else there except sort of the spiritual realm. And then 3 is very important, obviously, because of that. And these 3 cauldrons are kind of like chakras. If you take care of your cauldrons really well, you become like a perfected, enlightened person, hopefully. And sorry, I have to have a quick sip of water.
No, please.
You're good.
Yeah.
And then there's these 9 elements, which are also associated with these 3 realms and these 3 cauldrons. So they're completely different. Normal sort of Western magical tradition is earth, air, fire, and water, and then sometimes spirit or ether. Forget that. In terms of Ireland and its original spirituality, you've got the heavens, cloud, and sun, plants, earth, stone, moon, wind, and sea. Those are your 9 elements.
Okay.
They're quite different. Kind of reminded me in a way of the Chinese elements, because they have wood and stone and metal, fire and earth. So not the same, but kind of going in the same direction.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, it definitely parallels.
Yeah. You've got this correspondence as well with the human body. So it's a cosmological model, if you like. And then you've got like the person. So one is like a reflection of the other. A bit like this idea as above, so below kind of thing, with the macrocosm and the microcosm. So you've got the head, the brain, the face. There it's all associated with the realm of the sky, and Chorosois, the knowledge cauldron. And then you've got hair, flesh, and bone, which then that's associated with the land, Koira Anme, which is like the vocational one. And then finally you've got mind, breath, and blood, and that's associated with the sea, and that's Corrigoira, which is the warming cauldron, where you get your sort of strength and power, or this idea of what's called Nart, which is like chi in the Taoism, this kind of energy that flows through you, and you get this sort of inspirational power as well, which is like called Imbas or Awan, which so I suppose that comes really from the, I suppose, from the divine, from the gods, from the realm of the sky, but it'll sort of descend on you if you've kind of got your cauldron sort of aligned well, and you've got this nart or chi flowing really well around your body. You know, it's a bit like Tao, where, you know, if you're following the way and you're really sort of following like the course of the river of your life as opposed to fighting against it, then, you know, everything goes really well for you. You feel inspired, you feel in tune with the universe, etc. And you might even feel like a state of enlightenment as well.
Right.
So there's lots of parallels, even though on the other side of the world, I see a lot of parallels between the ancient Irish cosmology and what you find in the ancient Taoism in China.
Yeah. There is.
Yeah. Not by any happy accident, I don't
No, not at all.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I can't say if there's any connections with China. There's certainly a lot of people who think there's ancient connections between India and possibly the sort of the Vedic Persian Indian culture with the Irish culture, that, you know, maybe, well, there's certainly been huge migrations in the past, you know, 10,000 years ago or so. I mean, look at, have you heard of Göbekli Tepe? That place in Turkey? It's the oldest known excavated, actually not anymore, they found older still. That's from like 10,000 BC, the temple. They found even older temples there in Turkey.
Wow.
And these, you know, people who were there, where did they come from? They came from probably somewhere else.
Right.
You know, you've got ancient temples that we're, you know, considering we're supposed to be more or less cavemen at that point. A lot of the connections between cultures and ideas that are common may be going back to a far more ancient civilization that's was prevalent around the end of the Ice Age. And it seems to be a bit more than coincidence, perhaps, that some of these, the commonality of the spiritual themes that you find in different places.
Yeah, agreed. Even with the Native Americans here, I mean, there's a lot, even with Asian, even with some of the Irish.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
We could talk for hours.
Yeah,
about
we
that.
really could. You know, I am curious, and I know that, you know, a lot of our U.S., well, I shouldn't say, a lot of stateside folks may not necessarily know this, but obviously there's, in Ireland, you've got the Republic of Ireland, and you also have, you know, the UK part of it too. So there is a difference for those who don't know. And I'm always curious about how the traditions kind of I guess correlate. You know, you've got a lot of very rich Irish tradition, and then, you know, you've got a British tradition. There's so many different, I guess, different ways of celebrating, different ways of communicating, different ways of displaying. Do you find, and what are the similarities? What's different? What are the traditions like?
Well, it's a kind of a weird situation in that Ireland was all very much one country. In fact, oddly, the last place that the English succeeded in colonizing was actually Northern Ireland. The O'Neills were like really fearsome, and like Hugh O'Neill was a really, really smart leader. He almost defeated Elizabeth I, but he lost this 9 Years' War. And I suppose the north of Ireland, Ulster, was considered this great prize to the the Tudor monarchs at the time, and then the Stuarts. And so they kind of took over it with this plantation and stuff. But then Ireland was still one whole country up until the partition in 1921, after the end of the War of Independence. So part of this deal was that they got the 6 counties in the north, and there's a lot of Protestant people. I mean, most of Ireland has been Catholic, through its Christian history, and then you've got this kind of Protestant area that was in the north. And now it's pretty much more or less 50-50. In fact, I think the Catholic are very, very small majority now in Northern Ireland. And like, we've now got peace, thanks be to the gods that it's all ended, all this horrible warfare and the troubles it was known. And hopefully it'll stay that way. But you had this tremendous sort of divide between Protestants and Catholics, and the culture is very different. And if you look at the way that people celebrate Halloween, the traditional bonfires in Britain, and also including Northern Ireland, the bonfires at Halloween got moved to November the 5th because of what's called the Gunpowder Plot. There's a person called Guido Fawkes, or shortened to Guy, and he attempted with other conspirators to blow up the Houses of Parliament in London with gunpowder barrels, and he failed. And from that date onwards, which was, I forget the exact date, what it was, 16 something, all those bonfires got moved to the 5th of November, and they burned effigies of Guy Fawkes on the fire, and they also burned effigies of the Pope as well, the Catholic Pope. So it's very much, so there was this ancient tradition which has survived into the modern era, sort of, which was very, pagan, but had been survival into Christianity because of this attempted coup, if you like, in Britain, and to sort of like get rid of the Protestant monarchy. You then got this traditional pagan fire just got moved by a few days. I think moved by 5 days, and that took off in the north. So even now you get in the north of Ireland, the Protestants will have a big bonfire on the 5th of November, and they don't burn Guy Fawkes. Usually they burn the Pope because they're like, anti-Catholic. So there'll be like a sort of stuffed doll made out of paper and straw and stuff, who's up on the top of the fire, and he gets burned every 5th of November.
Jeez. I wasn't expecting that.
No, I didn't know that either, but that's crazy.
Yeah, well,
Jeez.
this kind of partisan divide is not quite the same anymore. It has died down an awful lot. There was this tremendous hatred between Protestants and Catholics, and absolute fear and aversion towards Catholicism in the north. I think that's changed enormously, and people have realized that they can get along. And a lot of it, to be honest with you, a lot of this was actually fomented by the British government. They actually encouraged the Orange Order, which is the Protestant sort of like order in Northern Ireland. They encouraged and stoked the hatred of Catholics and the hatred of the Republic. So, I mean, a lot, you could say, from my point of view, having read a lot about history, I'd say a lot of the people were brainwashed, into absolutely hating Catholics, hating the Republic, hating the Southerners. And I suppose with the war, and the Irish Republican Army sort of attacking the British government, and not just the government, that just made everything even worse. But I mean, I think now, when you're a pagan, obviously you're not Catholic and you're not Protestant either. So I think it's very different if you're a pagan. You're not.
Yeah.
A lot of most people who are pagan in the north would take a lot of their ideas from the ancient history of Ireland. They wouldn't be so concerned about the sort of more modern habits.
Mm-hmm.
They probably wouldn't be having a fire on the 5th of November and burning the Pope. They would celebrate Halloween.
Not.
They'd celebrate Samhain on the 31st.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
there wouldn't be anybody burned on the fire, probably.
No. So what is the significance of the fire? Like, what is it supposed to mean?
Okay, well, the fires generally, you have them at all the festivals. They generally symbolize the power of the sun, the protective power. That one of the things, right, going into October, November, the end of that time, you're at the end of the harvest, you're slaughtering your animals, you've got to get through this harsh time. The sun's getting weaker and weaker, and you want the powers of growth and warmth to come back in the spring. Okay. So you're kind of very much having not just a celebration to venerate the ancestors, but also to sort of placate the spirits of the land, placate the gods to get, your agricultural life to continue come like February, March, April, when you want to start up with growing things and putting your animals back outside, etc. Because you bear in mind that no one had shops back then. If you had a crop failure or your animals died, your only hope was really that your friends and family, your neighbors would help you. People didn't have money really. They might have had some rich people would have some gold and stuff, but silver, but normal people couldn't go and just run down to the supermarket and buy, a giant bag of flour or rice or potatoes or whatever. Actually, there weren't potatoes back then. That came in the Elizabethan times, but you get my point.
Yes, yes.
So you kind of relying 100% on nature. So if you want to placate the gods and ask for you to be protected through the winter, and the sun will return and fertilize make your crops grow, help fertilize them, etc., etc. You got a very agrarian society, and this goes back to, like, I suppose, our times in the cave, even, where people had fires for protection, for warmth, and as a symbol of, like, the solar power. In the earliest times, lightning would have come down from the sky and hit the earth and cause fires. People knew the sun would, they understood it was a big ball of fire that, like, kept us alive.
Right?
They weren't stupid.
Yeah.
Right. Even today, like, the sun is there. It keeps us alive. It's real. I seen a meme, and I think it was Native Americans, and there's some priest going, "Oh, you got to pray to our God," and the Native American guy in the bubble on the meme says, "Well, dude, at least the sun is real. It's there. It's actually there." So
that's pretty good.
People didn't really worship the sun in itself. The sun represented the power of the Creator, the power of God.
Right.
They didn't actually literally worship the sun, but they knew that, like, the sun was like a vessel of God's power, if you like. It radiated this energy and light that come from God, which keeps everything alive. And that's literally true. If the sun disappeared tomorrow, we'd all be dead in about, like, 24, 48 hours. We'd all be dead.
Well, we'd freeze, for starters.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go like that.
These fires were really symbolically important for ritual and as gathering places, and obviously placating the forces of nature and forces of the Creator, or the polytheistic gods or whatever, that sort of enabled humanity to survive. And central that, of course, is, like, the sun coming back, because there was this kind of sometimes a sort of crazy belief of some people had that when there was an eclipse or something, the sun might go away and never come back. I mean, as late as sort of like 1600s in the Aztecs, they were sacrificing people to appease the sun, the goddess sun. Of course, that's very misguided, and I think the Druids knew that the sun wasn't God and that the sun would return, but it's part of this whole agrarian belief and sort of an ancient kind of religious understanding the world that originated with solar and also lunar worship, maybe going back to the times when we were living in the caves, and it kind of evolved and progressed. But you've still always had this connection to the sun as a symbol of God or the gods or the power of the universe, the creator, whatever you want to describe it as.
Right.
And that still endures even now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so a lot to unpack. We've kind of unpacked quite a bit, and just kind of starting wrapping up some things. We usually like to ask folks who come on that have a much more breadth of experience than a lot of folks, certainly that I know anyway. What are some of the key misconceptions and things and takeaways you'd like our audience to know about, Druidism and pagans, and I know there's a lot of stuff out there that's just probably misinformation, but what are some parting things that you'd like our audience to know?
Well, I suppose the worst misconception of all is that pagans are evil, pagans are Satanists. I mean, Satanism does exist. I very much believe that Satanism exists. I know it does, and I've had personal experience in dealing with some of them. It has got nothing to do with paganism whatsoever. And, the church might kind of brand pagans as, devil worshippers, but that isn't actually the truth at all. I think that's the most harmful misconception that's put around.
Right.
But I'd also say that, like, as a general thing, not just applying to paganism, but applying to all spirituality, is that you really have to use your own intuition and think for yourself. In New Age spirituality, certainly in sort of Oriental, sort of Asian spirituality, you've often got like these guru figures. And, this phrase, kill your guru. Well, I really like that, although I'm not recommending murdering gurus, but what it literally means is about actually finding your own path and not letting some person kind of brainwash you or control your spiritual and intellectual life, or even down to, you look at some cults where people are pick who you're going to marry, and there's that guy Jim Jones, he went to Nicaragua with all his people and made them drink poisoned Kool-Aid.
He sure did.
All these kind of alternative spiritualities, and even within some of the mainstream religions, you have like subcults as well, which can be really dangerous. When you get people who are obsessed with power, obsessed with money, obsessed with having followers, forget about all that. Forget these people. I think you've got to follow your own heart, your own intuition, and carve out your own path through life, because we're all responsible for our own selves ultimately. And there's a lot of people you can listen to. There's certainly a lot of people that have helped me in my life, but I would tell people, don't put anybody on a pedestal. Always have some kind of critical thinking. If you've got like this little voice in the back of your head saying, I'm not 100% sure if I like that, or I feel a bit funny about that, listen to that voice. When you see people who are telling you, this is how it is, this is what you got to do, you must follow this, you must do that, you must do this. Usually those kind of people talking that kind of dogma, sometimes maybe years later it turns out that they are charlatans and rogues and crooks. I mean, you look at the history of magic, the look at history of religion, going back thousands of years, there's always been these people like that who will lead people astray, and you become like sheep, and it's actually the wolf that's leading you, not what you think it is. So I would just warn people to sort of like take more responsibility for your own spiritual life, and don't let anybody tell you what you should believe. Figure that out for yourself.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I agree.
What a way to wrap that up. Guys, listen, pick up Luke's book. It's a great read.
It's full of great information. Yeah.
And
lots of history.
Is there anything else you'd a way for our audience to reach out to you, or is any other than the book?
I have a website. Yeah, my website is my name, lukeeastwood.com. So you'll find loads of stuff there. I won't tell you more about that. Sure, if you're interested, go have a look.
That's perfect.
Great.
Well, listen, Luke, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to sit with us and kind of go over Samhain and its genesis and things of that nature. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great fun. I've enjoyed chatting with you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Right. Take care.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Luke, for coming. That was great.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's just so much out there. It's, as you guys now know, it's got such a rich history behind it. It's one of those things again, and I know this is really kind of a touchy-ish sort of thing. But a lot of our celebrations come from like druid and paganism and things like that.
Most of them do.
Right, most of them. And, I know a lot of people can find it a little touchy, which, whatever. If you're upset about it, you're upset about it. It's
history.
It is history. So, yeah, I thought it was a great time.
Yeah, he was super interesting. And you really should, if you want to know any more about it, because we didn't touch on the majority even of what's in his book. I mean, he goes detail by detail. Some of the very old stories in Ireland, of the... which he told us, he goes, don't even try to pronounce the Irish, the Gaelic, because you can't. So I'm not even try.
And I appreciate that.
Yes. But there's so much in this book. You really should check it out. It was really awesome.
And Mark, if you're listening, I'm sorry, I wasn't going to try listening to McCormick.
Oh.
So if Mark's listening, he's probably like, that's pretty good. Probably a good thing he didn't try pronouncing it. So.
Yeah.
Well, tell us what you guys think. It's a great time of year. It's one of my favorites, honestly.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah,
especially now that I know even more about it.
Yeah, especially the backgrounds and having, Celtic, I guess, blood for lack of a better word. So it was great.
I would love to go there.
Yeah, I'd love to go there for a whole host of things.
Well, yes, obviously. I think all of our listeners, if they've listened to us for a while, know that I would love to be there all the time. However, but especially during the celebration, because they have, parades and all that type of stuff. It's really, really cool.
For sure. Guys, remember, Samhain, not Samhain.
No, or Sam Hewen. Even though that rolls off the tongue like better.
Trust me, if there was Sam Hewen over there, she would just run to it.
He's Scottish, though.
I know. It's all right. Well, guys, thank you so much. Be safe out there for this holiday. Have a good time, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.